Hey there, Tony DeWitt here. I'm a retired Missouri attorney now living my best life on a beach in Florida. I offer content and commentary on current events in the law as well as some general legal topics, but I do not dispense legal advice by video. With that understanding out of the way, here's what we're discussing today. We're back on the CNN versus Young trial, the defamation case in Bay County, Florida, and today we're looking at some expert witness testimony. Now, expert witnesses play a crucial role in civil litigation for several reasons. First, in most cases, they have specialized knowledge, skills, or experience in a particular field that allows them to provide insights that can clarify complex issues for the court and jury. And then in this case, where you're talking about military contractors, I don't think very many of us out here in the public know very much about how Northrop Grumman and Boeing and uh, places like BlackRock actually conduct business or who they hire. And the witness who is called today is Major General Young, who is a retired Army general who has a lot of background in intelligence and that sort of thing. And he's testifying in support of Mr. Young, the plaintiff in this case. They're not related. In fact, let's take a look at that now.
Good morning, General Young. Would you please introduce yourself and tell the jury where you live?
My name is James Vincent Young, Jr., and I live in Pawleys Island, South Carolina.
And your last name's Young. Are you related to the plaintiff in this case?
No, it's just a coincidence. We're not related.
Did you know him before you were retained as an expert in this case?
No, I did not.
Now, one of the things that you want when you have a witness is you want that witness to be credible and you want them to be persuasive. And you also want to get out anything bad in their background right up front because you don't want the defense to, or if you're the defense witness, you don't want the plaintiff to come back and beat him over the head with that later on. So watch how the plaintiff's attorney does this.
And are you charging plaintiff for your services in this case?
Yes, I charge $695 an hour.
Have you ever served as an expert before?
Yes,
Approximately how many times?
about 20 cases.
So the fact that the general is getting $695 an hour for his testimony, it's kind of a bad fact. You hate to see somebody just really profiteering off of their testimony, but the gentleman could be making money elsewhere, using his time more profitably somewhere else. So if he's going to testify, he needs to get paid for it. And that's pretty much the same with anybody. It's fairly easily handled in oral argument at the end of this, argument on the final closing argument. But you want to get it off so that the defense doesn't come back in and say, aha, you were paid $695 for your testimony. And of course, the witness, a schooled witness, will say, no, I was paid $695 an hour for my time. My testimony is not for sale. And of course, that's one of the reasons why a lot of times they don't even attempt that. Now, an interesting thing about expert witnesses is that they can rely on information and evidence that is not actually admitted before the court. For example, if the witness wants to testify about a contract or base his opinion on a contract that is at issue, but that can't be admitted because maybe it contains a couple of sentences of hearsay information, the expert can rely on that even though it's inadmissible, as long as it's the kind of thing that other experts would use in the same situation. So that's another thing that's important. In order to testify about the loss that Mr. Young suffered, the expert witness is going to be required to be familiar with the work that he has done previously. And the plaintiff does a pretty good job of getting that information before the jury.
This is the contract between DynCorp and the Saudi government to basically rebuild the Saudi intelligence operation.
Was this one of the documents reviewed in preparing for your opinion on what Zach's qualified to do?
Yes. I mean, these are serious, important people.
And what does Zach's involvement in a project like this tell you about his employability at the time this contract was signed?
Well, if you're going to be asked to work on a project of this scope, of this magnitude, of this seriousness, with a serious customer, and you're a big part of the team, it shows that you're the best of the best.
Reason why they called this witness to the stand. which is to testify as a person who does hiring in this area for a nonprofit, for a foundation called AA21. Would this witness have hired Mr. Young after seeing that CNN report? And although it's broken up by a number of objections because the defense really doesn't want this information in front of the jury, nevertheless, this is the outcome.
You've seen the segment that's at issue in this case?
Yes.
Based on your experience and based on your work for AA21, would you have hired, after seeing that segment, would you have hired Zach to do work for AA21?
No.
Why would the segment have caused AA21 not to retain Zach's services?
Risk and reputation to the organization would be my question. As a member of the board of directors, I have a responsibility to for that kind of thing for the organization as a whole, and it would, and in that role, I would see someone like this as way too risky for our operation to be associated with.
So that was the critical part of General Young's opinion with respect to Zachary Young. And it established a actual pecuniary loss. He lost the value of future relationships with private nonprofit groups, basically because CNN slandered him or defamed him with respect to calling him somebody who dealt on the black market and who was a profiteer, charged unreasonable rates. And of course, the general also testified earlier that his rates were quite reasonable. In spite of all of that, the defense just can't leave it alone. And so the first attack here is, well, you didn't know enough to offer this opinion. Let's watch.
Okay. And this was the list of documents that you put together that you said you reviewed in preparation for your expert report, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I guess I'm not sure, what documents are you talking about that reference Mr. Young working on Plaintiff's Exhibit 18?
So it says various work agreements, SOIs, and correspondence from DynCorp, DCR Workforce, and others. Again, as I said before, I'm not sure what's an exhibit and what's been allowed in and hasn't, but in the context of looking at the all of these documents that were provided to me, it was my understanding that he was hired to work on this contract.
Now, after this, the defense says, well, you never really saw a contract and you really don't know anything about his work with this company. And eventually, General Young has to admit, well, no, I didn't actually see the contract and I'm not familiar with the work that he did or what his duties were, which you would sort of expect. A lot of these things are closely held anyway. But the problem with the attack here is that it's not like he didn't look at anything. He looked at a lot of different information. And then after that, they continually go after this lack of information by saying, well, who all did you talk to about Mr. Young?
You said a very ambitious contract, correct?
Yes.
There would be a lot of people working on this contract, right?
Probably so.
Yeah. Many, many people, right?
I guess so.
But you've looked at the contract, right? It's for a couple $100 million over 30 months, right?
Yes.
Right. That would involve a lot of people working on this contract, right?
I said yes.
I really like this witness because he's definitely poking fun at this lawyer. He's saying, take yes for an answer, fool. This is an annoying habit of lawyers who don't get the answer they want the first time. And as a result of that, they just keep going back to the well. Now, obviously, the plaintiff could say, hey, asked and answered, let's move on. But he doesn't do that because he wants this defense attorney to make an idiot of himself in front of the jury by asking the same question over and over again. It's really kind of fun to watch if you know what you're looking at.
This is the list of people. I think you said they were the 18.
Right.
Do you know any of these people personally?
I've met Mr. Panetta and Mr. Morrell.
Okay. In the course of doing your work on this case, did you reach out to Mr. Panetta or Mr. Morrell to discuss Zachary Young?
Objection, relevance.
Overruled.
No.
Now, this is one of those awful sneaky lawyer questions because he's asking, well, did you talk to Mr. Panetta or Mr. Morrell about, Mr. Young? And of course, Mr. Panetta and Mr. Young never met. Mr. Morrell and Mr. Young never met. Even this general, this major general in the Army, has only just been introduced to these two people. He's never really spoken to them about much of anything. And of course, he's offering his professional opinion. He's not offering Leanne Panetta's opinion because that would be hearsay. And so when you ask about, did you ask him about this? Even if he had asked him, the answer would be hearsay. And clearly, that's not going to happen. First of all, the lawyer already knows what he bases his opinion on, and he already knows that he's never talked to anybody about this guy's opinion because it's his opinion. And so he asks this to make it look like he's somehow hiding the ball, that he's just going off on a lark and a detour here because, he never really actually knew Mr. Young. And of course, that's not what he was hired to do. He was hired to look at the record, to look at the documentation, to look at the contracts, and offer an opinion as to whether or not it had an impact on his ability to be hired. And that's precisely what he did. Having not sufficiently embarrassed himself with a lot of other stupid questions, the lawyer now is going to ask a really moronic question. And essentially, this is the question that he's asking, and it takes him a while to get to it, so I'll save you all that and just spit it out. He wants to know if there was a 16-year-old girl in Afghanistan who was subject to being harmed. We'll leave it to your imagination what that harm might be. He sort of spelled it out, but let's imagine that there's a 16-year-old girl and you have the ability to get her out, that Mr. Young has the ability to get her out. Would your company, AA21, now knowing what you know, would you now hire him to do that? So this is a backdoor attempt to change his opinion, saying, well, maybe immediately after this you wouldn't have hired him, but now that you know that it was all a big mistake, a big misunderstanding, you'd hire the guy now, right? Well, like I said, it's a backdoor attempt to change his opinion, and the general isn't going there.
In your personal capacity, would you hire Mr. Young to?
Objection. He's asking in his personal capacity again.
Okay, in your capacity of AA21.
Yeah.
And that 16-year-old is in danger in Afghanistan. You'd hire Mr. Young to get her out, wouldn't you?
I think we're conflating two different things here. So I'm not trying to be evasive or overstep whatever the ruling was. You're asking me, in my role as an AA21 member, would I hire him? Is that what you're asking?
That's my question.
Yeah, and this was asked earlier, and I said, no, I would not hire him in my capacity as an AA21. I thought your original your question was about a personal capacity based off of everything I know now about Mr. Young and everything we know about Afghanistan. So I think, again, I'm not trying to be evasive. I think there's two. It feels to me like you're asking two separate questions.
I'm not trying to, but let's dig into that. So your testimony for this jury is that if you were still at age 21 and you knew that there was a 16-year-old girl there who was going to get killed or married off, and you could hire Mr. Young to get her out, you're telling this jury that because of the CNN publications, you wouldn't do that?
And that was asked earlier, and I said no. For AA21, I think there was too much risk of reputation involved.
Because of the CNN publication?
Yes.
So you would let that 16-year-old die or something worse happen to her because of the CNN story?
We'd try other methods.
The guy just can't seem to understand plain English. That was exactly the testimony that he gave on direct, and now you're asking him on cross-examination the same question, and he gives you the same answer, and you act surprised. This is bad lawyering because the idea of cross-examination is to get things in that help your case, not that harm your case. This is a little bit like shooting yourself in the foot because all you're doing is reinforcing the testimony that the plaintiffs got in the first part of this examination. that's a dumb thing to do when you are trying to defeat their claim. I think they are scared to death of this particular claim and this jury. They're worried about their reputation as the most reliable name in news or whatever their current slogan is. And I think that's what's really at issue here. And you've got suits in Atlanta that are driving this examination, and it's not working out, I think, the way they wanted it to work out. This is a bad situation. I honestly hope that Mr. Young is able to recover here. I think his attorneys have done a very good job for him just getting to this point. Defamation claims are among the most difficult claims to win. And so, in my humble opinion, which is neither humble nor necessarily completely informed, I think Mr. Young has a good claim here and that he ought to prevail. But we'll wait and see what the jury says. I think the trial is supposed to continue probably through today, and then we'll get a jury to give us a verdict on this. Like I said, I'm really hopeful for Mr. Young. I don't think the defense has done a good or credible job of representing CNN in this case. I think the best advice they could have given CNN is pay this guy some money and make him go away. But again, a lot of times pride goeth before a fall, as they say. Thanks for watching my video. If you have a request for me to cover a topic, please send me an email to the address above, and in the subject line put video request. If you have comments, drop them in the comments down below. If you found the content worthy, please consider subscribing. Since I started doing this work, I have always asked listeners to consider doing just one kind thing every day to make somebody else smile or make their life better in some way. Please consider doing that. It makes the world a better place. Now, YouTube has some suggestions for other videos of mine you may find interesting.